I'm a middle school East facilitator at a middle school here in Central Arkansas. I am also a grad student at UCA working on a master's in instructional technology. I was doing the media design and development section or program until they changed and added online teaching. So I've changed to that. So it's put me about a semester behind, and I'm going to graduate in spring. So I'm excited about that. And I'm excited about sharing all of the stuff that I've learned over the last couple of years and have pulled into my classroom. So we're going to talk about chunking information and how we can create bite-sized lessons for our students, especially in a digital world. So we've got lots of librarians and people from kind of all over the place. So that's awesome. Okay. I am going to, I think, get some of this stuff minimized here so I can show you my slides here. So our learning goals for today, we're going to look at breaking lessons into bite-sized chunks and applying design strategies to digital lessons. We're going to explore multimedia tools for digital learning, and then we're going to take some time at the end to work on practicing chunking a lesson using those tools. So here's our first learning goal, breaking lessons into bite-sized chunks. The course that I'm taking with Dr. Trumbull, Digital Age Professional Development, is actually not in my major, but I felt like it was really important skill to learn. And we got to pick our own topic for our professional development. And there were several things that drove my choice. Some things that I learned in my coursework, Richard Mayer's Principles of Multimedia Learning and Cognitive Load Theory. So we're going to look at that and how to take learning and make it into smaller, more manageable pieces. When we went home in March, even with the training that I've had so far, I just threw what I would have done in a week, like I would put slides together for my students, and teaching East, they were working on individual products. So then now I had to teach them some technology training. So I just threw some stuff out there and I said, go and do it. And then they just kind of looked at me and I kind of looked at them and I thought, why are you not doing it? And they were looking at me like, what are you talking about? So I had to realize that what I would do in the classroom with them, the communication that we could have, the give and take, was not going to happen online. So I had to be more deliberate in how I chunked that information into smaller pieces to help them be more successful in what I wanted them to do. And I jumped on the Bitmoji bandwagon. Just loved it. I was already using Bitmojis. So here's something that I want you to do. We're going to go into breakout rooms. And Dr. Trumbull, I really appreciate the suggestions you made with this, because it never occurred to me. When you send your students into a breakout room to discuss something that you have presented to them in the classroom, if I asked you to think about this slide and then go talk about it in a breakout room, but you don't have this to look at, then that's going to be a challenge, because now the students are trying to recall the information that you just showed them and not focus on the actual question. So here's a great tool or a great tip. Take a screenshot of this slide. You can take a picture with your phone, or you can just use a screenshot with your computer, so that when you go into your breakout rooms, you have this information and you don't have to spend your memory trying to recall. So we're going to go, hopefully everyone's got that screenshot. Let me throw the chat back up here. If anybody needs just another minute to get that screenshot, let me know. Looks like we're doing okay. All right, so we're gonna go into breakout rooms. And so discuss with your team how, just in general, how do you define engagement? Because we're looking at the overall goal of this is how do we engage our learners online? How engaging was that slide? And what would you even know what to do with that slide if you were presented with that in a classroom as a student? So let me come up here and we're just going to kind of randomize this and send you guys into some breakout rooms. I'll give you about 4 or 5 minutes, maybe not quite that long. Get to know each other, share your role in education, and then discuss that slide and decide how effective it would be in teaching an online class. And I'll see you guys back here in a few minutes. Got a few more people coming back from the breakout rooms. So one of the things that I did with this slide is I wanted to make sure that everybody knew what to do when we went into a breakout room. I've done a lot of online trainings and they'd be like, okay, we're going to a breakout room, and off you'd go and you're like, wait, and you get in there and you're thinking, what were we supposed to talk about? I can't tell you how many times we sat in a breakout room going, what did she want us to do? What were we supposed to talk about? And I've seen that with my students too, that if I don't give them really specific instructions and make sure we all understand, when they get in the discussion rooms, we get all kinds of crazy stuff that's not related to what we're supposed to be doing. Okay, so one of the things that I wanted to mention, and I'm gonna move this over here. I want to go back to this slide here for a second. One of the intentions with the Bitmoji classroom is to give students a bunch of different information instead of putting like bulleted lists on slides. But one of the things I discovered was overwhelming students with too much text then turns around and becomes overwhelming for us as teachers, because how do we design this engaging lesson for them where we're used to just, maybe putting these bulleted items that we can discuss whole group in the classroom. There's another slide that I want you to look at. So take a screenshot of this one, and I want you to go back into the breakout rooms, and this time we're only going to go like a couple minutes, and think about, do you know now, these two slides actually are telling you to do the same thing, but in very different ways. So think about now, what do you think you're going to learn about in this slide? And what is the difference between those two slides? What worked? What didn't? Neither one, well, the first one is really, I think, too busy, especially for a student to try and figure out on their own. But I'm going to send you back into the breakout rooms, and I've had just a couple people, I think, jump in. So let me see here. I don't want to do that. Don't want to do that. Okay, if anybody is left because you hopped in afterwards, I'll add you to a breakout room. So go and discuss and compare and contrast those two slides, and then we will come back together and discuss. Let's see here. I'm going to assign to breakout room 2. And Christina, do you remember who you were with?
Yes, ma'am. I was with Kathy Cook and Katrina Robertson. Sorry, I lost my internet connection.
That's okay. I know it's crazy. All right, let me put you back in that room. There you go.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. my gosh, I forgot to set my timer. This is really distracting to have all of this mess. How do I get this to go?
I think we're all back, Ann.
What?
We're all back.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm just sitting here minding my, that's why I don't have all of this. Okay, I was just sitting here going, where is everybody? Okay. All right. So does anybody have any thoughts about those two slides and how you would feel looking at them as a student? You can type it in the chat if you want to.
I definitely feel like the second one was a lot less overwhelming and the kids would know what to do with that. The first one, there was just so much that they would just, what I would do is just start clicking places and then kind of get frustrated if I couldn't get it to work. So I definitely liked the second one.
It was a little bit cleaner and kind of gave you some more direction. Okay, so, and I'm discovering that apparently so is my word. Not just but I apparently really love the word so. This slide right here, with having our online students, you realize that you miss a lot of opportunity to have conversations when they're online that you would normally do in the classroom. And with the survey that I sent out, I think some of you are in the same situation that I'm in, where I do have kids in the classroom. I have kids who are supposed to be online, and even like some of you are experiencing with internet connections, some of my kids just don't have the bandwidth where they can engage with us in the classroom on a regular basis. So we want to be able to engage our students, and that doesn't necessarily mean that we have to put on a 3-ring circus, but it does mean give the kids a way to interact with the material. So if I was going to give these slides to my students at home who were not going to be in class with me, they could watch the video by clicking right here. They could use Edpuzzle, and I think some of you have used Edpuzzle. Edpuzzle is really nice. In fact, I'm going to give you a copy of all of these slides at the end, and if you click on this link right here, it takes you to Edpuzzle, where this video is uploaded. You can watch the video, and it will stop the students periodically through the video where they answer comprehension questions. You have a teacher grade book, and you can use it like a quiz grade or something like that, so you know when they logged in and answered the questions and things like that. If you're going to do a video whole group, you need to move it off of the little slide like this, because that's kind of too small to watch. So you want to come over here and watch it this way. And so we're going to watch this. It's only a couple minutes, but it does a really good explanation of cognitive load theory, which kind of drives all of the things that we're learning in this professional development.
Imagine that you're a student It's Friday and school is out in just a few short hours. The weather is perfect and you can't wait to get outside. Oh no, did you just lose your pencil? Nope, found it. Your teacher is writing something you've never seen before on the smartboard. Is this a new lesson? You're not sure what those little numbers mean, and you're already a bit distracted, so by the time class ends, you feel a little fuzzy. Your brain has had a lot to process, and although you don't realize it, your working memory is at capacity. Prominent educational psychologist Dr. John Sweller helped demonstrate that working memory, the cognitive powerhouse dedicated to rapid perceptual and linguistic processing, has a limited capacity. After initial processing, all incoming information is either discarded or begins its journey to long-term memory. The cognitive load theory that emerged from Sweller's research provides us with insight into how we can improve learning outcomes. To understand how this applies in the classroom, let's break it down. As you were sitting in class, your working memory was bombarded by this new information, along with millions of bits of distracting stimuli taken in through your senses. It can be very easy for working memory to be overwhelmed, but your brain has a clever strategy to address this. It sorts new information into schemas or categories based on what you already know. When incoming data doesn't fit nicely into pre-existing schemas, your brain quickly adapts those schemas or develops new ones. According to cognitive load theory, this process is both active and fluid and can be enhanced with the right supports. So what if we could start over and strategically introduce exponents in a way that would create vital connections with other more established schemas, like your strong foundational knowledge of multiplication and addition? We could then pair those connections with proven methodology, such as strategic practice and scaffolded feedback, to transform a challenging task from a potential source of frustration into a powerful aha moment that will be remembered. The more we study the science of learning, the more we can utilize research to develop better instructional materials and
Okay, and I'm going to stop that there because the rest of it's kind of just a commercial. But one of the things I'm building as I go through this is predictability for the students. So when you saw the slide for the breakout, eventually as a student, you wouldn't even need to see that it says a breakout session. When you saw that slide, you would know what was coming. One of the things that I have learned to do that is really great for online learning is creating these little speech bubbles right here. So if a student is having a hard time hearing me, a lot of times my students, especially in the afternoon, our internet is so bad that my voice is garbled. I can pre-record what I want to say and insert it as a speech bubble. They can click on it. And again, that is getting them to engage with what I'm doing. I'm having a real struggle, and I imagine we probably all are, in getting our students to move from being passive receptors to active learners. And if they are just sitting at home, I told my students yesterday, I am not your personal reality TV show. I need you to engage with me. And this is a way that you could do that, is to get them to like click on this and listen to that. I just lost my train of thought here. Click on this and then have them communicate with each other in a chat box. And there's a couple of different ways that you can do that. We're going to look at that when we get to tools. I'm also creating predictability with the slides here. So here's chunk 2, and we're going to talk about design strategies. This slide is, it was a lot simpler, and then I went back and I've added some other things, because you're going to get a copy of this, like I said, and we're not going to go into every piece of this, but I wanted you to have some resources, and I wanted you to see how you could do this for your students. If you give them this as assignment, you can even do this synchronously with your students and then have them go back and look at the slides and interact more. I've got something about multimedia learning that you can click on that to hear it. This right here talks about the cognitive theory of multimedia learning. You can click on that and it takes you to an article that tells you more about it. This is Richard Mayer's book. This is actually, I wouldn't do this necessarily for my students, but it would depend on the purpose. If you click on this link, it takes you to Amazon, where you can buy a copy of it yourself. And then this is a copy of the lesson plans that I've created, and I'm going to give you a copy of that as well. But this is kind of probably the biggest part of this is I tried to find a lesson plan out on the internet that would help me really chunk my lessons, because what I was doing was saying, okay, well, I've chunked it. This is what we're going to do Monday. This is what we're going to do Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. But that's not really chunking the lesson. So I needed to be more deliberate in what I was doing. So this is just an example of how I put some different ideas together. You're going to have your main unit, something that you would normally teach maybe over a whole week, maybe a couple days. And now for your online learners, you need to take that whole thing, that whole lesson, and break it into smaller pieces so that they can digest it easier. One of the big mistakes that I saw myself doing is each lesson that I was giving them, each smaller piece, didn't have an objective. There was no learning goal. I needed that to know where we were going. They needed that to know why they were doing that. So just for this example, we're going to chunk lessons, and we're going to break that into smaller pieces. We have looked at bite-sized chunks and why we would do that. We're looking at design strategies, then we're going to look at tools, and then we're going to put it together. And then now you have different chunks right here. So you can, one of the things I didn't like about the lessons that I was seeing online is I need to know what resources I'm going to use for each chunk. And I would see up at the top just one big list of all of the resources that you could use for that lesson, which is hard when you're going and putting those chunks together. I want all of that together in one chunk. So this is what I'm going to do here. And then I'm going to move down to chunk 2. This is a Google Doc. So when you get your own copy, you can add chunks, just copy and paste. You can delete to make it fit what you need. So we're going to come back over here, and we're going to go to another breakout room. What I'd like you to do here is think about the lesson plans that you use. And it was interesting in the survey that I got some responses back on is more people did not have lesson plans that were directed by the district. So I'm curious in the lesson plans that you've chosen for yourself, how are they different or similar to this right here? And what I am also going to do, this is a really great tip to do with your students. If I had given you my whole presentation right now, I would have lost half of you. And I know, especially with my own students, they would have gone, well, she gave it to us, so I can just go off and do this whenever I want. I don't have to do it right now. And if I wanted them to come back and interact with me, giving them the whole presentation is going to be too overwhelming. So I can break it up into chunks. So I'm going to paste, oops, I didn't mean to do that. Here is the link to the lesson plan. So you can all click on that and get your own copy, and you'll see that it looks like this, and you can make a copy. With your team, discuss the different parts of this lesson plan. What works, what doesn't, and then we're going to come back if we've got some time and share some ideas in a chat box. So go back over into our breakout rooms, and I will pay attention this time and see you guys back here in a few minutes. Right, I think we're pretty much all back. So here's one thing that you could do with your students. Have them, now that you've had a chance to discuss whatever the topic was, and for us it was comparing and contrasting the lesson plans that we do, you could have your speech bubble play.
In the chat box, share some of the ideas that you and your team discussed. How similar are the lesson plans that you already use to this new format? How different?
So if you want to go ahead and share some ideas in the chat box, you can do that. One good question, how do you transition from one chunk to the next? That, you can do some different things with that. You could do like a bell ringer to lead them from one thing to another. What did you learn in this section, and apply it to what you're learning in the next section. That is really very flexible. It would depend on, I think, the topic and how you wanted to present it, but there's a lot of different ways that you can do that. Let's see if there's anything else. Got someone uses a mind map, so yeah, that would definitely be good tools. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next thing. This part is the fun part. This is where I get to play with my design tools, and that's where I have a lot of fun. It's a great way to share things with your students is, instead of doing like a bulleted list, you can create an infographic. And I used to think before I started the grad school program, oh, infographics are only like companies do that. They're really easy to do. You can go to Canva, and we'll look at that tool here in just a little bit. This actually was a template that was already created. I didn't really have to do too much to it. But some of the design principles to help engage your students, especially not to overwhelm them, is to keep the fonts simple. And there is a link here that you can check to look at the differences between the different fonts. You don't want to use more than 2 different fonts, and you really don't want to use more than 3 different colors. You want to make the graphics and the videos that you use count. Don't just throw, like in that Bitmoji classroom in the front. When I put that up for my students in the classroom, and I said, what would you learn about? And a lot of them said frogs and Thanksgiving, which means they completely missed the point of what we were going to do. So only use things that are going to add to what they're supposed to be learning. Embrace the white space. And again, that Bitmoji slide did not do that. And I had a hard time doing that. I used to think the more the better, throw up everything. Even if we were going to learn about frogs, we don't need 50 pictures of frogs on that slide. Make it count, just have 1 or 2 and leave the white space around it to emphasize what you are trying to communicate to your students. If you're going to present a complex concept, use graphics, use videos. Don't try to just online talk it through. Even if you're meeting synchronously, use a video to explain, or use an infographic or a diagram to explain it so that they can visualize it better. And lead your learner. Place your graphics where you want them to start first and then lead them through. And so I've got an example to help you kind of see what I mean by that. So here's my first font. It's at the top, it's big, it's colorful, it grabs your attention. Then it moves them down here, different font, 2 different colors. And I'm not counting the white background as a color. And then I have a graphic here to tell them to do this. We don't have time to click on this, but this is the mother lode of videos on graphic design and e-learning tips that is a playlist on YouTube. So if you're really interested in doing this, that would be a great resource to check out. So multimedia tools. I think some of you have used a lot of these in the past, and I'm kind of breaking my own rule a little bit with overloading it a little bit, but I wanted this to be a tool that you could use. There's a link to Bitmoji. I use Flipgrid a lot so the students can engage with each other that way. I use Giphy to get my flashing graphics to grab their attention. I use Screencast-O-Matic to record my lessons so that they can go back and watch them. There's a link to Edpuzzle and YouTube. I use Unsplash to create or to add images to my Google Slides. This link right here will take you to an online voice recorder so you can do your own speech bubbles. And this is a new tool that I have found. It's called Wiser. It not only lets you do interactive worksheets, but it also lets you differentiate for individual students. I just saw that when I was messing around with it on Thursday. It is an excellent tool. One thing I want you guys to do, we were going to go into breakout rooms, but I don't think that we're going to have time for that. I am curious though, if you've had experiences with any of these tools, and we can put it in the chat box, anything that you like or you don't like about those tools. Yeah, Edpuzzle is really great for getting your students to engage with those videos, especially at home. And you can use Screencastify, but I really like Screencast-O-Matic. There's a lot more options with it, and you can add music. So that one's a great tool. I'm gonna have to check out listed charts. I'm gonna write that down. That looks like a great tool, because I am by no means an expert all on this, and I know that you guys all have some great ideas too. And Camtasia, I've used that one before too. Okay, so moving to the next thing. So we want to look at designing a lesson. And one of the things that I really like about using the Bitmoji classrooms is you can change this background to anything you want. I just keep thinking, if I was teaching like social studies and we were going to talk about Rome or something, I would put that as the background and have me in the picture and have the speech bubbles and have the kids click on one thing for a video. You really could do your whole chunk in one slide, depending on how you did it. It's depending on how you wanted to lead your learners from one thing to the next, because you want to make sure that they're following the order that you want to go in. So we're going to practice with the lesson, and I'm going to give you a copy of practicing. And we were trying to find a topic that everybody would do. So this is a good one. So think about driver's ed, and understanding vehicle control is the topic. Demonstrate an understanding of basic pre-driving procedures. So what is the purpose of vehicle controls, devices, and lights is the essential question. But how would you break this up for online learners? How would you separate it into chunks, and how would you make it more engaging and interactive for your learners? So I'm going to put that link in the chat so you can click on that. And then we're going to go back into breakout rooms for maybe a little bit longer, but discuss with your teammates, how would you chunk that together? Just kind of play around with it a little bit, get comfortable. And I think, how would you transition from one section to another is a really good question. And I think that needs to be purposely planned so that your learners see that connection. So we're going to go into our breakout rooms again, and we'll go for about 6 minutes, and I'll see you guys back here in just a few minutes. I've got the chat box open, so if you have any comments or questions, or you and your team came up with some great ideas that you'd like to share, you can put that in there as well. And I'm going to add a copy of the slides that I did. So this is your copy so that you can go back and find all of the tools and the links and all the different things that I shared. So you have your copy for that. And this is a copy of the post PD survey for you to share and let me know your thoughts and how I can make this better. This is my first one I've done, so I know that there's definitely some places where I can grow and get better with that. So let's see if anybody has any questions. And then Dr. Trumbull has also put the form up there for you to get your professional development credit for the session.